Hi, this is Tara with Love Prevails back again. I hope everybody had a really nice weekend and is excited about their week. I have my friend Brian here. He's going to tell us a little bit about his story and why he stays in recovery. And Brian, I'm really glad that you're here, and I'm very excited to hear your story. Tell me, because I'm talking to a lot of people who are either in recovery or they are considering recovery. They don't know if where they're at and if they are, you know, even need to be here. And so I think getting different stories of where people come from, it helps people, to put the dots together so that they know. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback and response from people that have reached out and they didn't know until they started hearing stories. And a lot of people don't know where to turn. And so that's why I've started doing the podcast. And with Love Prevails, we're doing intervention support services, peer support services, working with the family. And so what I'd like to know from you is what brought you into recovery and why do you stay?
Okay. Well, first of all, I love to talk about recovery because it brought me a life that I never could have gained on my own. I very much had a long tradition of alcoholism, and both my families, my mother and father's, both of their dads were alcoholic. Uh, One particular, my dad's dad actually died of cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 42. And my grandfather had to quit for my other grandfather for medical reasons. So, long line of history of alcoholism and drug addiction. My father entered into recovery very early on, and I was 16 when my dad got into recovery. He was 37, and that was the beginning of the rooms of recovery for me. Fortunately, I had a very good relationship with my father, and I trusted the path that he was taking. And the evidence of finding recovery in the rooms of recovery was undeniable. It literally gave me a father in that sense, and it established a long-standing relationship up until he passed on his 71st birthday with 33 years of recovery.
Mm-hmm.
I call that graduating. And he had a legacy of recovery. And recovery isn't always about recovery from alcoholism or drugs. It's also recovering from a lot of other toxic things that actually kind of lead to the drinking and the using. And that has been the target of my recovery. When I came into these rooms, I was 21 years old. I came in because I saw my father change genuinely, and I trusted what he was doing, and therefore I had an open mind. But my father he introduced me to the rooms and recovery principles, but he said, you have to walk your own path. You have to I have my own fellowship in a different area than him. And I was very fortunate to have my father lead me in very early on, because it spared me a lifetime of drugs and alcohol, in the sense that it just, the deep soul stain that it leaves on us. We turn against ourselves when we're addicted, and things that, for blackout drinkers, that it's even worse. So for me, at the very least, recovery has been first of all, recovering from an old mindset. First and foremost, that I'm no longer doing this alone. I need people. I need a higher power. And more, I would say the thing that's helped me the most is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And showing up to help people, even when it's not necessarily convenient. I sponsor and have mentored many men along the way, and I consider it a privilege when they open their life up to me and share their story, and I share my experience, strength, and hope. And that is at the core of what recovery is for me: is my experience, strength, and hope. Um, I'm a sojourner. I'm going along with people in recovery. I like that idea because it's not about shouldering each other's recovery as much as we are just walking side by side. And on occasion, when we see someone that's really down and out, we do kind of pick them up and carry them a little bit for a little while. So we were talking earlier about maybe what the holidays and how they affect. Um, Drinking and using usually goes way up during those periods of time. Again, I came into the rooms that when I was 21, and to honor my family, um, I would go be with my mother, brother, sister, and they were still drinking, and my brother was using as well. And but I knew to protect my recovery, so went and did that with them. And then when it really started to get to where they were drinking and using a little bit more, I would exit and I would go to. We had a recovery club, the Alana Club, and they had a pool table, like a bar set up, and we had round the clock meetings for literally 3 or 4 days. It was such an incredible place to recover, and I started to assimilate my new family of recovery. It was amazing, honestly. I consider myself rich that I got to be exposed to so many different people. Um, it doesn't matter what age, male, female, black, white. It doesn't matter. I bonded to all of them, and I also got a broader perspective of God's grace in that. And so during the holidays, it's always a challenging time. There's triggers with family. There's triggers with self. And with that, there's a desire perhaps to maybe numb out a little bit, or kind of, because we don't know, if we don't have tools to deal with those things, then they can be very much disabling. And or we've lost loved ones during that period of time, and we don't know what to do with that grief. We're reminded of their absence. So I was, again, I honored my family by showing up, but I honored my recovery as well. I had also gotten married to a woman that was in recovery. My entire life really has been geared towards the recovery community. Also, I have faith, and I attend church on a regular basis, and I've served there and taught there for a long time, and I consider that a privilege as well. But had I not gotten sober, had I not discovered tools to unveil the things in our heart that causes trouble, the things in our mind that lead us astray, I call them thinking errors. It's outside of me. One of the greatest things I learned when I first came into recovery was this notion of toxic shame. To me, toxic shame is that I identify with my behavior more so than who I am. Right? Mm-hmm. I am not my behavior. I am a child of God.
Yeah.
But I'm not my behavior, and a lot of behavior was very erroneous and addictive, and I just didn't have the tools yet. Of course, I was very young, but I was inspired. I knew that in order to keep drugs and alcohol at bay, and alcoholic thinking, moreover, I had to be very, very serious about these rooms and what it meant. And it's not just the rooms; it's a lifestyle. It's a support group. I'm really leaning more towards the recovery aspect of it, but what it wound up being was a support group, a support network. And we're communal beings. We're meant to be in community. We're healthiest in community. I know I am.
Yes.
And I have a wide variety of support network in so many different areas, spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, societal, work even. I have at least 3 mentors. And I have at least 3 sponsees. It's been in 3s for whatever reason, because I draw from all of their experiences, and as I give back to people who are walking down this road and help them discover new ways to think for themselves, right? Their recovery, and I love the idea of take what you need and leave the rest.
Yes.
Right. Look for the similarities and not the differences. And really honestly, there was a guy that I recovered with, and he used to say this on a regular basis. He said, he introduced himself and he said, gratitude is our sanity. And as a young man, I thought, what are you trying to tell me? I got to be grateful all the time? Is that what this leads to? But what it was is, if I didn't balance the scales of, there's a lot of struggle, addiction in the beginning is hard to get out of, break the routines. But I got to come over here and say, I have a shot at this thing. I have a shot. And there's a passage out of the big book that says, God could and would help us if he were sought.
Yeah.
I also want to say very clearly is that this notion of a higher power is just that.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be religious in notion. It's meant to be experiential. I have spiritual experiences, not religious practices.
Mm-hmm.
I do things consistently, but I don't even like to attach the term religious to it because of the connotation, and to the degree that I have put my mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being and physical at a high priority, I'm a much better husband, father, friend, son, and these are the things that keep me coming back and pursuing. I just went through a year of discovering yet another layer. We talk about layers of an onion, right? The recovery is that. Getting rid of old belief systems and even healing, revealing and healing things, exposing and disposing of what needs to go. And it was a lot of hard work. I had to sit with emotions I wasn't comfortable with, but I knew that I could get to the other side.
Right.
But I also did a lot of research. I went into a new area of recovery, and I drew from the experience of people the methodical, proven results that were attainable.
Mm-hmm.
But it really had two things I had to do. I had to humble myself, and I had to put in the effort.
Yeah.
And what I found, the payoff is a freedom of my heart, a true confidence in my ability to walk through life successfully. Not because I am great per se, but I like the word knitted together.
Mm-hmm.
It's with a support group, and also there have been times I've gone through some tough times. I had a daughter that was very much into drugs and alcohol. She almost died 3 times, one from alcohol, one from heroin, and I almost lost my girl.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the hardest things I ever walked through. I literally had to do some Al-Anon work around that and really discover how I needed to have clear boundaries to protect my own emotional sobriety. And now we have so much fun, and we talk all the time, and she's got a beautiful baby boy who's turned 3, and my first grandson. And but those were tough times, and on the toughest day, I'll never forget that day, the safety net of the support group that I had in place. There were 10 people, I'll never forget, that came to my aid on one of the hardest days of my life. And at the end of the day, I was reflecting, praying for my daughter. And I just thank God that I had invested all that time into those people. Because a lot of the safety net really was the people that I helped.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, a few that were mentors, but more people that I had invested in. And it came around and paid in dividends that I'll never forget. Life is not easy at all. There's a lot of tough stuff. A lot of tough stuff. We can't kid ourselves about that. My father was clear in that he said, in order to live, we have to live in reality at all costs. Both sides of the coin. The easy, the joyful, and the very sad and tragic.
Right.
And everything in between. And I've learned how to live with that, even more so now than ever. And I have to say, I've literally been in the rooms of recovery for 36 years. A long time. And I don't say that in the sense that, beat my chest, look at me, what I've accomplished. It's to prove, I literally saw a 21-year-old the other day walk in the rooms, and I went right to him, and I said, why are you here? And I said, I got sober. I said, how old are you? He's 21. I said, I got sober, and I have 36 years. And the only reason I say that is to let them know it's possible. Right? People that have given me vision and their experience, strength of hope, give me hope that I can do it. But it's my journey, right? It's not theirs. And I had to discover my own path. But it sure is a lot more fun to do it with people that are doing the same thing. I also had to change my old playgrounds and old playmates, right? I had to open myself up to new ways of thinking, embrace, especially for men. It's kind of hard to open up. I mentor a lot of guys, and once I earn their trust, they open up, but it takes them a little while. They don't really know what to do with their emotions half the time. Actually, I have a sheet of 60 emotions or something, and when we review things, I help them discover new ways of feeling. And it's been incredible. I have dear, dear friends and guys that I mentored that I just not only love them, I love their family. You know, I have an extended family, and it's possible. Um, but it has to be taken seriously. My father would say, we can't afford to take ourselves too seriously, but we must take our efforts of recovery very seriously.
Right.
Because I am not smarter than my old sick ways of thinking. I'm not smarter, but I gain wisdom through community, through prayer and meditation, through sitting with my own thoughts and feelings. Every morning I get up, I have a cup of coffee, and I sit with my thoughts and my feelings. And then when I get clear, I have in a sense intimacy with myself. Then I can kind of hear that still small voice of direction. And to me, I had an analogy come to me one time. I get a lot of analogies like this. It's like I have a plate. That plate belongs to me. It's my plate to clean up. And to me, either at night or the next morning, I work on or I avail myself to cleaning off that plate. And then, how I see it, is my higher power gives me my portion for the day.
Yeah.
And it's good. So, yeah, I it's not an easy road, but it's worth the effort.
You said a lot of really good stuff, and some things that I do and don't relate with. One, you talked about your dad being in recovery. In my home, I grew up in a super strict Baptist preacher's home. There was no drinking of any kind in my home. Did not enter into my home at all. And so I didn't grow up with that at all. It was, I had to sneak around when I did get older. It was still living at home, and so that was always super hush hush in my family until we got older, and then became a little more open here and there. And you also talked about how the holidays are really tough, and suicide rates go up around the holidays. I've had a couple of careers where I worked with people that died, and I had the opportunities to, I'd see death report after death report after death report, and around the holidays, it's just like it explodes. And of course, that's just based on my work experience. I'm certainly not doing the actual research in this, but you hear about that quite a bit, that the holidays, suicide rates and addiction, it skyrockets because there's a lot of really tough stuff that comes up over the holidays. And for me, we buried my dad the day before Christmas Eve. We found out at Thanksgiving he had 6 months to a year to live, and he was gone by Christmas. And so that always brings up those emotions for me. And another thing that you mentioned that was really good for me to hear was we are a victim of ourselves. And this last week's been really a big week of reflection for me, because man, I was a victim of myself for a literal lifetime. And I did some, I think we talked this week, and I might have mentioned it to you. I'm looking back because I did, you forget a lot of stuff. At least I did when I first started this journey. And I've always said, well, I didn't start drinking until later in life. But I can look back and I can see, in my 20s, I was a very hardcore partier, but I walked away from all of it. And the years I was married, we had a week of drinking, 2 weeks maybe of drinking, walked away from it. And then through the years, I might have a binge, and then I'd go for several years, a binge. And so I never really considered that as alcoholism because I walked away from it. But what I've learned is it's not how often you drink. It's what happens when you drink. And so, and I can look back on that, and some of the things I did during those binges were awful. I had one binge where I pulled all my hair out because my mental health was so bad, and I was suffering with such depression. My girls were away at summer camp, And that's what my girls came home to. And when I say I pulled all my hair out, I mean I had to wear a wig for 2 years, pulled all my hair out. And but it was just my depression and mental health. It was just at such a point where I couldn't go on anymore. And I look back on that and I just came to the realization this week that, my gosh, I spent a lifetime as a dry drunk and I didn't know it. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to get emotional, but that just brings up a lot of tough stuff for me. But if I had known back then what I know now, I don't think it's so much different. And that's why I'm doing these videos, is because if I can help one person out there know what I missed out on and change their life now instead of later, when, and I don't consider my life over, I consider my life just beginning, then that's my goal for this. You mentioned, gosh, you mentioned so much stuff. Those were huge. I wouldn't be able to do it without my higher power, and my higher power is also God, but it's a loving God. It's not the vengeful, reaping coals of damnation on your head, God that I grew up with. And so I appreciate that you mentioned that, and it just does a lot of really good stuff. And doing these videos has opened up a lot of stuff for me, and it's been very healing for me. And I've gotten some feedback from people that have been sober but have kept it a secret. And somebody mentioned this past week that they've always been afraid to talk about it. And so that I know that these videos are reaching people and they're helping people. And and I really appreciate what you had to say, because it was a lot of really, really good stuff.
Well, I share the same passion with you about giving back and helping people, in a sense, kind of bring the light into their darkness, if you will. It's actually one of the greatest joys, short of my children, is to help another person come out of the grip of addiction or alcoholism or depression.
Depression is huge, and alcoholism or addiction is just a symptom. There's something deeper, and we all come from somewhere, some sort of trauma. You also mentioned your daughter, and you've watched me with my daughters, and you said that the people that you helped were the ones that helped you through that.
Yeah.
I didn't help the people that helped me through that. These people that know me from Adam that helped me through that. And so while now I have more of an attitude of service and I want to help other people, I wasn't in that mindset when I needed help with that. But they were still there for me, and you can bet I didn't give them a thing, but they gave me a lot.
It's interesting you say that. Literally, as I was driving over here, I thought of the phrase, freely you have received, freely give. And that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. That's why we put time into this. And it really is the nature of recovery or healing. Something that comes to mind about, as it relates to addiction and alcoholism, in the 12 steps, I'm just going to make one reference to the first step, and that is that we are powerless over alcohol or drugs, and that our lives have become unmanageable. I didn't have a problem admitting that I didn't drink normally, yeah, and the drinking led to drugs. I noticed that if I didn't drink, I didn't do the drugs either. So I knew that they went hand in hand, and if I was to actually have sustained recovery, I had to give up both. And but the part about admitting unmanageability, I had so much toxic shame about that I was just broken. I didn't know how to live this life, and we kind of learn helplessness. We learn toxic shame, and we have to unlearn it. But the first thing I have to do is just admit, truth be told, Even though I put down the drugs and the alcohol, I had to learn how to deal with my life being unmanageable when I wasn't drinking and using. I used to blame it on drinking and using, but I realized that was really not the problem. The underlying stuff was really what I had to go after, and I could not manage that on my own. And so I had to admit uh, unmanageability. This is my belief about my higher power. He only requires one thing from me: honesty and humility. Everything else, it seems, is provided for me. But if I'm honest, I admit I'm powerless, and I'm humble that my life is unmanageable. What I've gotten, I would have sold myself so short on the miracles, you know, uh, way short.
Yeah.
I can't even go into it. I'll start crying
Yeah.
out of gratitude, And my father passed on his 71st birthday, 33 years sober.
Mhm.
And me, my sister, his wife, his son-in-law, and his nephew were around him, and he went peacefully. Unfortunately, I had a brother that didn't go so well for him. He wound up the last 10 years of his life on the streets. At one time, he was married, had two beautiful sons, property, homes, business, money, and one thing led to the other. And unfortunately, he died of a heroin overdose in a tent in Chinatown. And I got a call from my aunt that he was in hospital on life support, and I had to fly out and take him off life support. It was one of the hardest things I ever did. Um, so I know both sides. I know the joy, and I know the sorrow. But it's so much better. I can't even compare to what it was like before. I can't even imagine it. I have a little bit of a different perspective because I came in when I was 21, but I had to take it very seriously. I would say at 12 years, I kind of walked away from the rooms and I started pursuing money, property, and prestige because I thought I had the world by the tail, and I almost drank. I was this close because I put monetary things above my mental and emotional and spiritual well-being, and by God's grace, I didn't have to do that. Um, so it's wonderful, but it is hard too. So what I would say is, no matter what, be as honest as you can be. Find people who are safe and that are willing to help you, and as much as you can, just crack that door open just a little bit more, a little bit more. And I find that there's things that are contagious in these rooms, right? And people, I share very, very honestly. I can pretty much share. I probably share more than I should half the time, but that's my nature because I'm not ashamed. My dad told me, practice telling your story without shame.
Right.
Real recovery equals me getting to that place, and I can do that now in front of hundreds of people, and I have done it. Not because I am great, but because it's the evidence that I have truly recovered from the toxic shame that kept me down, kept me in despair. Even when I wasn't drinking or using, I had great despair. I was still against myself,
right?
And that's a horrible place to be. I'm not saying I haven't gone there from time to time when I've missed the mark or the expectations that I put on myself, but to the degree that I stay close to these rooms, we talk about being in the center of the herd. Whatever you do, reach out for those that can help you.
Right.
Save your own life.
Well, there's a lot of people that carry a lot of shame.
Yes.
And they do it silently. And when there are people that are comfortable coming forward and talking about their journey and the shame that they carried and how they worked through it, it gives other people that open door, and they can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and they can see, well, maybe there's a chance for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's very important when you can feel comfortable to talk about it, because there's somebody that's listening that feels, that hopefully it has the courage to reach out. And so I do appreciate it, Brian.
I'm glad I get to share.
All right. So I'm grateful for everybody that watched today and everybody that will watch. My last video got over 1,000 watches, and so I'm hoping that more people will share this one. We're getting a lot of really good response. If you or somebody you know is struggling with addiction, please reach out to me. You can reach out to me through my website, or you can reach out to me privately through Messenger. I'd love the opportunity to talk with you. I also would like to know if there's anything that you would like specifically discussed, and if there's any questions. And if you can reach out to me privately, I would love to know what specific questions you might have, and so that we can address them live. Your best life is waiting for you, and connect with me. We're going to find it together. And I want to thank everybody for watching, and I hope to see you again next Monday, every Monday at 3:30. And I am really enjoying doing these videos and enjoying the people that are a part of this with me. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And I hope you all have a good day.
Take care.